A few weeks ago, my husband and I packed up our entire life and moved to a new country. Now, some of you might be wondering, why would you want to move away from Canada? Isn't that the place where people want to live? So many people want to move to North America. Why would you leave? Well, let me tell you about that. Right up until 2026, my husband and I were living in Alberta, Canada. It is a large province with about 5 million people and quite a lot of industry, specifically oil and gas. While my husband and I were living in Calgary, Alberta, I was taking the C train into downtown pretty regularly. I had my job in one of those nice tall skyscrapers in the downtown center, and well, I was also living my best adult life, which is, you finish university, you get a real adult job, and you commute in and out of the city center. So that's what I was doing, and it was really depressing, not for the reasons you'd think. Every single morning, I would stand there in the C train, doing my best to, zone out. I would just be staring out the window, and all I would see driving by would be dozens and dozens of various addicts in different stages of passing out. And every morning, I would wonder, these drugs must be pretty awesome if you consider them a fair trade for all the things you're sacrificing, your family, your friends, a comfortable life. They're that good. Would they help me? Because I feel miserable. There's nothing much in my life that is actually wrong. It's just that I feel disconnected. I feel sad. I don't know what to do about it. And clearly, the drugs are working for those people. Now, I was already on a very high dose of an antidepressant, and of course I also did have my anti-anxiety medication, which was quite addictive. Luckily, I never abused it, and I was able to stop using it without any trouble. It did, however, take me over a year to wean off the antidepressant, because that is one of those medications you do not want to stop cold turkey. Apparently it gives you brain trauma that, gives you a decade worth of depression just from the chemical brain trauma, and I don't want to mess with that. It was around that point that I knew something had to change. When I was sitting there thinking, you know what, fentanyl can't be that bad, that's when I knew something had to change. We were thinking that perhaps the problem was city life. Maybe if we removed ourselves from that situation, things would get better. We grew up in a small town in southern Alberta. Maybe we should go back to a small town in central Alberta. And that's what we did. We packed our things and moved away from Calgary and moved into a small town. While we were there, we were trying to buy a house, but I think, as many people found after the latest house increase of about the COVID era, nothing was priced according to what it was worth. Houses that should be selling for about $100,000 as a starter home were selling for twice that. And it's not that I think that houses should be free. I think that people should be able to afford housing. I think that starter homes should be at starter prices. And some of these houses that we looked at had the kitchens collapsing in on themselves, and we would definitely need to invest at least another $50,000 on top of the $200,000 that we would pay for the house. And these were, again, not particularly nice places. 1940s builds with zero work done in the last nearly a century. These houses were not worth the prices that they were asking and that they sold for. And in a big city like Toronto, Vancouver, fine, I can kind of see why that is. But in a small town, an hour from Calgary, another 30, 40 minutes from Red Deer, no, it's not worth it to me. When we left Calgary, I also had to leave my job because it was an in-person job, and my husband kept working at his, but I left mine and I needed to find new work. Part of living in a small town is acknowledging that there's not as much work as there are in cities, so that was fine. I was happy to look for quite literally anything else. Eventually I did find something in the nearby city, and I was working retail for a bit, and retail is fine. It's just that it's minimum wage, and in Alberta you can't live on minimum wage. You can just barely survive with a couple of roommates and eating nothing but ramen, but you can't live, and frankly you cannot live a healthy lifestyle on minimum wage. Many of my coworkers were struggling single parents who were working 3 minimum wage jobs because none of those massive corporations wanted to hire them on as full-time staff, because then they would have to pay them benefits. Heaven forbid your employees get any sort of benefit. So I was working there and doing the commute, which was, again, fine. But things didn't really change. I liked the small town life a lot more. I was able to get more involved with the community. I joined the arts society and I had a great time, chatted to many wonderful people. But it didn't really change the fact that my husband was even more miserable than before. In Calgary, he had a bit of a social circle and had activities that he would go to. Now he was isolated from all that, and he was kind of stuck working on his computer during the day and then at night, for fun, playing video games at his computer. And that's fine for a little bit of time, but over a while it gets really depressing. He wanted to be outside, he wanted to go talk to people in person, he wanted to be, have a normal, healthy life. And we weren't really able to do that. We couldn't just start up a garden because we were renting, and they weren't going to let us dig up the front yard. We couldn't have a dog because, again, the landlord said no, and we couldn't really even paint the walls. So we were stuck in this kind of beige apartment, which I did my best to decorate, but there's only so much you can do. A few months into living in the small town, my husband and I were just having a conversation, talking about what we were thinking about and how we felt about the housing situation, and we were both pretty unhappy. There wasn't much we could do. There was no really a good alternative to the rental that we were living in, and there was definitely no housing options that were on the markets that were within our price range. So we were just talking, like, what is our next step? And as we talked, it became quite clear that we were both very unhappy, very disappointed, and kind of feeling a bit defeated, because there was just nothing we could really do to achieve our goals. Our goals included, having a nice community, being able to grow our own food, and being able to modernize our house so that it could have solar panels, it could have a good HVAC system, because the smoke season in Alberta these days is nothing you want to mess with, and you do want to have well-filtered air so that you're not essentially smoking cigarettes without smoking cigarettes. And, well, we were just talking, and at some point I just said, well, what are we even doing? I mean, this is absurd. The houses are super expensive. We're never going to get what we want, and we're definitely not going to be able to afford what the things we need. So why don't we just, move to Costa Rica? And my husband, to my surprise, said, yeah, why don't we? I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, why don't we? I kind of said it as a joke, but now that I'm saying it out loud, why don't we? This is where a little bit of lore about me comes into play. I was born in Costa Rica. My family is from here. I managed to maintain the language despite the fact that my family moved to Canada when I was 5. I was born Canadian because my father has that citizenship, so at the time that's how that paperwork went, and I was also automatically born Costa Rican, and I've maintained those 2 citizenships throughout my life. My parents made a big effort to make sure that I never lost connection with my family down here. Now, that does not make me culturally Costa Rican. I am in one of those weird limbo spaces that many children of immigrants find themselves in, where they're not fully Canadian because they were not born there and their family is not, 10th generation Canadian, but they're also not fully wherever they're from because they left that place when they were so young, or they were never even there to begin with. It's just that they feel this sense of othering all the time, but they're not sure why. I personally think that I blend into white Canadian society pretty well, so I never felt that as strongly as other people did, but it is a feeling that is pretty prevalent amongst children of immigrants who find themselves in the same situation as myself. So when I come to Costa Rica as a tourist, I feel a slightly deeper connection with it than a general tourist would. However, that does not make me a tica. To be tica, I think you have to be born and raised here, and I was not raised here. Anyways, as my husband and I continued to talk, we came to the realization that with fairly minimal effort, we could move and make him a resident and then a citizen, because through marriage he would qualify. And his job was remote, so he could really do that from anywhere in the world. We had some savings, the ones that we were intending to put towards a house, that we could then spend here on a property and hopefully setting up a comfortable lifestyle for ourselves. Before we knew it, we were booking airplane tickets, we were booking hotels, we were booking rental vehicles, and we were even booking health insurance for ourselves while we traveled. And we then spent the next few months packing. Now, packing means different things for different people. For me, it means absolute hell on earth because I have a little bit of a hoarding tendency. I have a lot of art supplies, and in the apartment, we had rented a 3-bedroom apartment. We had the bedroom for sleeping, we had the bedroom for art storage, and then we had the bedroom for art room. And those are all my stuff. And as much as I love stuff, sometimes it can become a bit overwhelming. So it took months, just months of me systematically going through everything I owned and deciding, is this a project that I can complete in the next few weeks? Or is this a project that's just honestly never going to happen? Or is this a project that I should take with me? And after hours upon hours of work, I managed to whittle my art supplies down to a couple of boxes and a handful of things that I was actually going to take. That was quite the effort. I did not like that at all. My husband had a much easier time of it just because he doesn't hoard supplies like I do. And soon enough, we were down to 3 large suitcases each, 2 carry-ons, and 1 personal item. Before we knew it, our lease on our apartment had expired and we did not renew it. So we were out of there. We had settled into my dad's basement for a few weeks while we waited for our plane, and we sat down to really start planning ahead. We figured out where we had to go, the appointments we had to keep, and we did our best with the information we had online. Later, we would discover that the information online was not accurate, but that's a problem for a different day. And as much as I enjoyed spending time with the family dog, I had to say goodbye, and we loaded up my dad's SUV and drove towards the airport. It was a surprisingly quick drive for, an over 250 kilometer drive, but we finally made it to the airport. The airplane company accepted all our suitcases, which thank goodness. And before we knew it, we were past security and just waiting to board the plane. It seemed like all of our work was, finally paying off. And as the plane took off in Calgary, we finally were able to relax. Not for long though. We landed in Liberia at 6 a.m, which, if you know anything about Costa Rican temperatures, is that Liberia at 6 a.m. is insanely warm. It's in the North Pacific side of the country, and the average daily temperature there is like 35 on a good day, and I'm not a huge fan of that kind of weather. I'm more of a 20 degrees Celsius type of person. So landing there at 6 a.m. meant that it was already 25 degrees Celsius, and we had to get our luggage loaded onto the truck and taken to the rental so that we could pick up our rental SUV. Normally I would go for a smaller car because more fuel efficient, but we had quite a few suitcases and they were packed for weight, not for compression. It has been a hectic last few months and even crazier last few weeks. We've done our best and tried to make everything as easy as possible for ourselves, but hey, we've got some things wrong, and I'm sure that you'll be hearing about that sooner rather than later. Now that we've been here for a little while, we've been able to get into the rhythm of working for our jobs and then, managing to spend our free hours doing some research and going out and getting stuff done. So it's been, like I said, crazy. However, it is a step towards what we want. And what we want is a life free from the stresses that require antidepressants, a life free from the misery of living in a society that is so self-centered and so focused on earning money and making yourself a millionaire, which we all know how often that happens, that they forget about everything else. No, we want to live a comfortable, happy life. The reason we chose Costa Rica is because of the pura vida lifestyle and perspective on life. And that is something that I also greatly value. I want to feel happy. I want to feel connected to my community. I want to feel connected to myself. And I'm not achieving that by working in a skyscraper in downtown Calgary. So here, hopefully, that is something that we can work towards. Are there any things in your life that you're unhappy with that you think are part of the problems that I've mentioned here? Because I would like to hear from you. Feel free to leave a comment down below. Tell me about how you feel about your life and the values that your society values versus what you want for yourself personally. If you're interested in following and hearing more about us, then hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and join us on our journey. We've got quite a few things planned. The next video should be a tour of our Airbnb, and then we've got something in the works that hopefully is a bit more long-term, and we'd love to share with you guys. Oh no, my hat's getting wet. I don't want my hat to get wet. The rest of me, I don't care. I just don't want my hat to get wet.